Well, good afternoon, everyone, and it is precisely good afternoon. I'm excited to have you all join the launch of our Lunch and Learn webinar series. So come on in and get settled. Um, just as a kickoff to our time today, my name is Reggie Hammond, and I'm managing partner for Your Crescendo, and we have been partnering with the Metro Atlanta Land Bank for the last couple of years, first to develop their strategic articulation plan. And now, based on that strategy, we are in the midst of doing a refresh of their brand. So many of you that have been around Atlanta and have known about land banks might recognize the former name of this organization, which is the Fulton County City of Atlanta Land Bank Authority. So we have new everything. We have a new name, we have a new logo to reflect our focus around affordable housing, vibrant communities, and economic opportunities. And we've got new imagery, but we are fortunate to have, kind of the same old focus on our mission and purpose. So today we're excited to be launching our Lunch and Learn webinar series, which is an opportunity for us to talk directly to people that we're hoping to build awareness of the land bank with, including neighbors and residents and investors and nonprofit organizations and community development entities, all that are strategic partners for the land bank as we continue to advance our work. And that work we will get an opportunity to have some great exposure to starting now. So we are fortunate in that in Atlanta, as land banks have become, pretty popular across the country, we have one of the foremost authorities on the topic of, establishing and growing land banks as the executive director of the Metro Atlanta Land Bank. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Chris Norman, who is executive director for the Metro Atlanta Land Bank and has been in place for at least the last decade. And he's gonna kind of bring you an introduction around what is land banking and how the land bank in Atlanta works. Chris?
Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Reggie, thank you for that great introduction. Happy to be here to share some insights into the Metro Atlanta Land Bank, how we operate for the land banks in general, and just kind of start giving you an awareness of what they're capable of doing and what they're kind of focused on doing here in Atlanta. So Reggie has been a great partner for us over the past year as we've kind of recrafted who we are. And so I want to give kudos to him and his team. And things have changed quite a bit. So this is going to be kind of a 30-minute journey into some of the background and intricacies of the land bank. And then hopefully this will give you some thoughts, some ideas, and we're going to have a QA session at the end where you guys can actually provide questions that I'll respond to. And as Reggie mentioned, as we kick this off, this is a way for us to intimate reach and connection with our stakeholders and interested parties. And we will continue these going forward, and we'll just have different topics. So why not start off with the first one, which is what is a land bank and what are they all about? So I will be kind of leading this conversation. Hopefully you have your lunch and everybody is ready to go. So just make sure we are operating. So what is a land bank? People often wonder, they hear this term and it kind of brings a few things to mind. So we are not a bank in a traditional sense of a bank that your Wells Fargo or any type of financial institution. We are public nonprofit entities that really focus on, we're created by local governments and really focus on acquiring and maintaining and really facilitating the redevelopment of these properties that sit out in our communities that we hope people could do something with and try to creatively move them back into production. So you'll see that's what they are. they are tools. So it's important that you understand, exactly what a land bank can do and what it is, but it's a tool. It is not the end all be all for all property issues in a community, but they are essential tools. They're very helpful when you start dealing with vacant and abandoned and distressed and vacant properties around your respective communities. This is something that um, this is something that uh, that we focus on. So categorically, who do you deal with? So we deal with residential property, commercial property, industrial property, green space property. Can, all of those basically are eligible uh, typologies for us to get involved with. And so the core competency of a land bank is really this acquisition and disposition. So you see one thing here that's not included is the redevelopment. So land banks actually can get involved in development by statute, by status. We're legally able to do that, but typically land banks do not get involved in that part of the continuum. They're really looking at, how can I tee up this piece of property for a better life, for a better use in our community? We also do not have eminent domain authority nor taxing authority. Those powers reside with your municipal corporations, i.e. your cities and your counties. The land banks do not do that. A land bank can participate with that activity in your city or county as a recipient, but we cannot, we don't have the ability to initiate those processes. We also typically step in where the market has not cured problems, right? So think of a land bank as kind of your governmental real estate company, that if the market was clearing all the land, theoretically over the years, if property went into foreclosure, you would have a new market player that would come in and buy that piece of property and redevelop it and do something with it. But sometimes you have properties that just kind of sit out, and for whatever reason, they're not being pulled back into the marketplace. So land banks can then step in to try to move that property back into a productive use, help clear title, help to kind of right size it in terms of where it needs to be and being accessible. And also, when you have certain types of administrative or legal issues, you have taxes that are outstanding, you have delinquency, you have foreclosure actions, all these other types of things, land banks can also get involved in those scenarios. So, all right. So the mission for us pretty much reflects what I just talked about. Our sole goal is focus on returning this non-revenue generating, non-tax producing, blighted property to an effective utilization status. And effective utilization status means hopefully it will be turned into a well-maintained and occupied property that's going to be generating taxes. It's no longer a drain on the tax digest of the city and the county. We also have this very unique ability here. We can extinguish past due tax liens, which no other entity in the state of Georgia can do. So we have the ability to work with our board, with the school system, with the tax commissioner's office to extinguish past due taxes that may be a hindrance to a property for its redevelopment. And so that has proven to be something that has been a very helpful tool for us as we participate and do our work. So you start thinking, okay, well, why would a land bank get involved, right? So we hear words out there, you see these on the screen here, distressed and non-tax producing and abandoned, all these types of things. But these are conditions that nobody wants in their community. And that includes us as a land bank authority. So we are interestingly and singularly focused on trying to eliminate these conditions in respect of our communities, at least at a very significant level. And so you'll see properties like this that have been abandoned, that are even boarded up, they're still blighted, right? They still have and create issues for us. So we try to basically work cooperatively with partners, with everybody else, to take these types of properties and turn them into something that we really desire. And that being something that is more helpful and more beneficial to the community. So at the end of the day, I always joke, the land banks, their goal is to work themselves out of business. Because if we were able to deal with all these properties that are out in our communities and cure them of all these conditions that I just alluded to before in those previous slides, everything would be code compliant, right? Everything would be producing taxes. We would have occupied structures via residence or via a business owner. Everything would be maintained. We probably figured out as we do all this redevelopment, we'll have some shared community space, pre-COVID, and post-COVID, this will still be a concern, but do you have little pocket parks where people can come together? Do you have a place for the kids to play? Do you have a place to shoot, a game of basketball, or just to convene? And then also, ultimately, we all want vibrant and safe communities. And so that's what you have as a land bank that's working to provide. And one thing that's become more and more important as we have evolved over the history of our land bank in particular, and other land banks across the country, is that we also want to pay attention to affordable housing options as we produce and bring properties back online, particularly as the cost of living continues to increase, particularly in city centers like the city of Atlanta. So give you a little bit of history about the land bank. So land banks have been around for a long time. You'll see that this is a ramp up. So St. Louis started the first one in 1971. It took 20 years to get to the fourth land bank in the United States, which happened to be Atlanta. And so over those 20 years, the land bank in St. Louis and Cleveland, these were basically created because what was happening in these areas is that you had a collapse of industry. You had steel, you had shipping, you had major industries that were pulling out. And what would happen in these communities is that you would leave behind a lot of distressed property. And then of course, the market value of the property would go down. The tax digest or the tax delinquency rate would go up, because even if a property is abandoned, the tax bill still comes. And so what you were ending up with was you had this huge amount of delinquent taxes sitting on properties, whereby the market value had basically plummeted. So now the taxes outstanding were actually more than the property was worth. And so these municipalities found themselves with their hands tied and said, gee, how can we resolve this? And one of the ideas was create a land bank with this tax delinquent extinguishment authority. And therefore you could go into a neighborhood where the taxes had basically overcome the value, and the land bank can go in and reset that. So that was an important feature that was kind of tested and started to be used there. And so Atlanta started with that back in 91. Really geared up in 1994. You remember you had the Olympics came to Atlanta in 96. And so we started doing a lot of those types of actions. Now, since then, a lot has happened. There are actually over 200 land banks now. There's 150 here, but there are actually more than 200. And more than half of those new land banks have been created since the Great Recession back in 2009, 2010, 2011 with the collapse of the real estate market. Because what cities and counties found that they needed a better tool to deal with this distressed property, and they had so much that it overwhelmed the systems. And so that basically came into place back then. So you now see primarily the land banks are Midwest to the East Coast, not a lot on the West Coast, but you're now seeing that there's interest in Portland and there's interest in other places further west to create land banks. So Georgia, we actually have over 23 land banks in the state of Georgia. So there are more in places that people may or may not be aware of. This slide here, I put this slide up here because it gives people kind of a sense of jurisdiction. So land banks don't have to just be in large cities. They can be in small cities. They can be in small counties. You'll see ranging from somewhere like Fulton with over 1 million residents to smaller places, it's Thomas County and Thomasville, Georgia. So as you think about land banks and their utility, they can fit in each different community. So kind of talked about the focus area of these land banks. We focus on these four properties of property: residential, commercial, industrial, and green space, which basically means that a land bank can operate with basically any type of property in your respective area. And the geographic boundary of your land bank, basically, since one thing about a land bank is they're created. You'll see that back to the slide here, you'll see a county and a city. Well, you have to have at least one city in a county to create a land bank by the state law. And so you'll see these joint ventures here. And so the jurisdiction for land banks is the full boundaries of the city that participates in the creation. So in our case, the city of Atlanta, we can operate anywhere in the city of Atlanta. And then the unincorporated portion of the county that is also the creator of that land bank. Interestingly enough, in Fulton County, we actually don't have any more unincorporated space except for a small sliver off of Fulton Industrial Boulevard. So actually, we only operate within the city of Atlanta. Prior to city of South Fulton, we actually operated in that part of the county as well. But you see these other areas, they actually operate in their cities and unincorporated portions of their county. So that kind of gives you an idea of the geographic boundaries of those. So this slide gives you an idea of the evolution of our land bank, the Metro Atlanta Land Bank, formerly the Fulton County State of Atlanta Land Bank. So we really started in 91, 98. We really focused on dealing with tax extinguishment, tax abatement. We had a lot of property as people had moved out of the city of Atlanta that basically left behind, and we were trying to clear those taxes on that property. So we did a lot of those properties. We also helped cleaning property for the Olympics and all that kind of stuff. That was one of our big issues. And this is before my time, but this is kind of historically what we did. We were also involved in doing some park creation. Parks were assembled within the land bank, and then they were put back to the city, and they became part of the city's inventory. And then also we were involved in something called Interim Judicial tax foreclosure, in which we were basically working with the tax commissioner to do tax foreclosure on properties and basically free those properties up to go to developers. So that's one thing that we got involved in. And so I'm not going to walk you through every particular item, but I'm going to kind of just breeze through some of these. But the way I've done this slide is you'll see the white space is kind of a continuation of what we were doing over to the next series of period of time. And then you see the color, the orange writing is basically new programs we were adding. So you'll see in these figures kind of say, well, we were kind of walking and kind of jogging, and now we're running in terms of just the pace of what we were doing. So we did a lot of this tax extinguishment stuff. 98, 2008, we got into sheriff and marshal deeds, which is kind of a one-time thing for us. The city and county had these fractured title parcels where they had a lien interest. They transferred to the land bank to clear. And we've actually moved about 500 of those types of properties over the years. We have about 80 of those left. If you go to our website, they're still there. So if you're interested in purchasing those, please feel free to look at those. But we started doing that. 2008, 2009. The funny thing about the land bank is that we didn't own any land really up until 08, 09. Even though we were a land bank, we were more clearing, processing property through it, but we didn't own like fee simple interest in properties. But 08, 09, we bought our first foreclosed apartment building in the Lakewood part of the community off of Pryor Road. And so from going forward, we've actually owned land since 2008, 2009. The recession hit 2009, 2010. I talked about that. So things started being created. We started land banking. We became a participant in the neighborhood stabilization program. We started working with the community land trust concept in the area. And then we started doing public-private partnership, development partnerships. And then the Secure Neighborhood Initiative is a joint venture with the Atlanta Police Foundation, in which we help provide housing for officers. So you can see that we actually started getting much more creative in terms of how we do stuff with the land bank, and we've continued to be creative. And now we're moving into our next current venture, which is more focused on chronically distressed property and also assembling property in particular areas. And of course, the question marks are we continue to add to that portfolio of properties as we move forward. So what are we up to nowadays? So this kind of gives you an idea. Well, before I get to that, I also want to speak to some things that happen on a state level. So in 2012, we passed a new law in the state of Georgia that governs how land banks are actually operated. And that's the Georgia Land Bank Act. So basically up until that point, we had operated on the law that was put in place in 1990 in the state of Georgia. From 1990 to 2012, we were operating under that old law. What was happening though, with all these new land banks coming around the country, there was a lot of innovation happening in terms of the law, in terms of what they could do. And so we felt that we needed to not up our game and improve. We need to become current with what was going on around the country. And so all the land banks across the state of Georgia, we also kind of informally knew each other before then. We all came together. We created the Georgia Association of Land Bank Authorities. And then we actually created an officer infrastructure. So I'm actually the president of the Georgia Association of Land Bank Authorities, called GALBA. And since then, we actually went to the state legislature. And we were able to basically to petition them, and they passed a new state law that reflects kind of some of the features you'll see around the country, particularly Michigan and Ohio and these other places, New York. The land banks in Georgia can now operate under that. And we opted into that law, and we've amended our operating agreements and all that. And so we're now operating under that. and we'll have future webinars and we can get into more detail about exactly what does that mean in particular. This is kind of just giving you some sense of what's going on with land banks, right? So having said all that, beauty of a land bank is you have a lot of diversity of things you can become involved in. So this is kind of a running list of things that we get involved in. So remember I mentioned that land banks are a tool. So land banks really cannot do everything on their own. They have to always be participating. They have to always be involved in working with other partners to execute our programs. And it can be a wide variety of programs. You'll see here that, some things I've already mentioned too, NSP, the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, workouts, land banking. Some of these things we actually have created, and some of these things we are leading. So you'll see lead, which means that we are the participating, we're the driver of those things, right? But you also see we participate and we partner with a lot of folks on really good projects around here. You see the Atlanta Land Trust, which is kind of gaining steam. We're a participant with them. We're doing joint ventures with the city in regards to some of their processes and projects. We had national partners, Neighborhood Stabilization Initiative with the National Community Stabilization Trust. We are a participant in the Transformation Alliance, which is a very broad entity that exists. And then also you'll see the Secure Neighborhood Initiative, which basically works with the Atlanta Police Foundation. And we just closed on another property with them. It's what we take distressed property, we're able to transfer it to the Atlanta Police Foundation, and they basically redevelop it and they make it available to officers. And that's an extremely important concept because it actually allows us to have representation from our officers living in our communities. So not just patrolling, but actually living and becoming our neighbors. So that's a great program. We've been proud to be involved, and we hope to continue to do that. We've actually helped to do assemblage. Either we've actually bought parcels and we've held them at the land bank, or we've actually helped to clear title. One of the recent big ones was a park over in the west side in the English Avenue, Mims Park, and that we actually helped to clear a lot of the delinquent taxes on some of those parcels. So we get involved in a lot of different things. So people often wonder, well, how do you guys get property, right? How does the property make it to the land bank? So multiple ways property can get into the land bank. Property can be donated to us. So if there is a party that for whatever reason doesn't want their property anymore, and we agree that it makes sense for the land bank to take it, we will receive it via donation. We can actually buy property like anybody else in the marketplace. As long as we have the money to enter into an arm's length deal, we can do just like anybody else and buy property. There's a non-judicial tax foreclosure. The tax commissioner, you'll notice that, once a month on those Tuesdays, you'll see properties being bid on the courthouse steps. The land bank can participate in that. We can walk up to the steps just like anybody else, and we can put a bid in on properties, and we could do that. One interesting thing about the land bank, though, if we came in and we had the minimum bid and nobody else bid against us, and we bought that property via the tax foreclosure, we can actually extinguish the outstanding taxes, which is a unique thing for a land bank. And then non-judicial tax foreclosure. This is another type of tax foreclosure that's really dealing with tax liens, and we're working with the tax commissioner and see if we can get that activated there. Public entity conveyance. If there's surplus property available at the city or the county, they can convey it to the Land Bank Authority. And there's actually one thing that just happened a couple of years ago in the state of Georgia, which we have not executed in Atlanta. There's an eminent domain process for blight. So if the properties, and the only place I know in the state that has done that is Savannah, but there's a way to actually use an eminent domain via blight to take down property, and then those properties are transferred to your land bank, and then land banks can do something with it. And then criminal seizure and conveyance. So we actually have received property via this process as well. The United States Attorney seized property via a money laundering drug case, and they ended up transferring property to the Land Bank Authority, and we've been redeveloping those parcels. So these are different ways. You'll see there's a wide array of ways that we can actually come to possession of property. There's one additional one, which is interim judicial tax foreclosure. That has not been offered in Fulton County for some time, but at one point we did do that. And we're going to see if we can actually make that available again to us as well. So this kind of gives you an idea of, again, a wide array of acquisition methods. You'll see in our strategic initiatives, one thing I pointed out was activation of the comprehensive chronic distress property strategy. And so this chart here looks a little busy, but I'll just explain it to you and then just kind of walking through this. And then I'm nearing the end of my kind of overview, and then we'll open up for questions. But you'll see kind of a horizontal axis and a vertical axis. Horizontally, the top row basically shows all the ways a property can be considered bad, right? So it's tax delinquent, it's been in foreclosure, it's held by banks, they're sitting on it. We have code violations, they're blighted, they have repeat code violations, there's criminal activity. We have all those things, but of course, remember, beginning of this presentation, we wanted all these things to be in very compliant and good statuses, but these are not. So then we start saying, okay, property owner, we want you to basically move that property from your possession to somebody else's possession so we can do something with it. So then we start getting to the ways in which you can actually cause property to be moved from the bad actor to a new actor. So they could donate property. They could say, you know what, I'm not good, I can move it. You can do tax foreclosure on the properties, which we already talked about. That's on the courthouse steps. We can actually go buy it from the bad party. We could actually do, you could foreclose on the liens that are outstanding. We just actually kicked off a process with the state, the city of Atlanta, to foreclose on demolition liens. And then the criminal seizure, we talked about property seizure. So U.S. attorney, district attorney, they do have authority under certain criminal proceedings to seize property. So you have these ways, then you start moving these properties from this bad status through these actions to a good status. So of course, these parties, the next axis shows you, well, who would be involved in executing these processes? You'll see the land bank, you see the tax commissioner, you see the solicitor's office, you'll see these multiple law enforcement agencies. And then as you go down, this gold box reminds us that none of this stuff is free. So it does take money. It is real estate. So you need money for acquisition. You'll need money to manage the property. Once we own property, we do have to maintain it. So we have to cut grass, we have to clear debris, we have to basically make it secure. We have to make sure they're not squatters sitting there. It takes money to do that. And staff, and of course, if we do demolition, have to do demolition. But you also need money for legal costs, so quiet title, legal filings, foreclosure procedures, all of those types of things. And we provide insurance on our property ourselves. So these are the types of things that we need funds for. So once we have all this, we dispose of property typically either via application, request for proposals, that's what RFP means, request for qualifications, that's another approach to doing participative bidding, and then auctions, which we have not done, but that is something that's available for us to do. So at the end of the day, once we do all that, what we want to do is take a significant number of properties, move it to a productive use from those bad postures to good postures. We want to have measurable economic impact, and we want our staff to really kind of do a lot more than they have done historically, and then basically have impact. So who does this work? This gives you an idea of who is involved. So we have a seven-member board, 4 appointed by the city of Atlanta, 3 appointed by the Fulton County. You see there, myself, the executive director. We have a senior program director, we have a program director, an asset manager, an office manager, and we have an analyst positions. And so this kind of gives you an idea of our permanent employees, the blue, but we also do have a lot of virtual capacity. So via these green boxes, we work with partners to basically execute our programs. So, and then at the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to have affordable market housing. We want to continue the process of eliminating blight. And then we also want to revitalize our communities as we move forward. But we also understand that to do this, we have to have some control of the land itself. And so all these things I've just kind of run through real quick, give us an opportunity to do that. So that is kind of our 30 minutes. And just want to make sure that we stick to that time as we move forward in this series. We want to give you enough information to kind of start getting the wheels turning, generating questions, and you can start gaining a better understanding of what we do. And then also metroatlantalandbank.org is our website. So, having said that, our contact information is here. The slides will be made available, and this will be posted on our website. So now we will open it up to any questions that you might have. And Reggie, I guess we'll be doing this via chat.
Yes, we will. So if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A feature in the chat, and we'll get them to Chris to answer. Chris, you see the questions there in the box?
All right. So I see both. So I'll go through the chat box right now, and then we will also look at the Q&A slide. So there is one question here.
Chris, go to the ones that are in the Q&A. I'll take care of the ones that are in the chat.
Chat. All right, excellent. So Q&A, how does the developer engage with the land bank to acquire properties? So properties are disposed of via typically when we're engaging with developers, we do requests for proposals. In some cases, we've done requests for qualifications. So one model we use for neighborhood stabilization is that we actually did a request for qualifications, and we created a qualified pool of developers. So we had, we processed about 50 to 80 properties through that program. And so we ended up with a pool of developers, and we did the RFQ because we wanted to make sure that our partners were going to be capable, they had experience, they had financial capacity, operational capacity, all those types of things. So we conveyed a property, then we had some confidence that they would actually be able to deliver what we needed. So they went in, we qualified them, the board approved that pool. And then once they were in that pool, we basically did RFPs for the properties that were available for that program. So that was one approach that we did for them. We will periodically also do requests for proposals for specific properties. And when we do that, we will lay out what we want from the developer in terms of his partnership. And then we would basically go through a scoring and a review process and understand that every property that leaves the land bank has to be approved by the board of directors, to approve that. So there's no instance where Chris, any member of the staff, lawyers, none of us can basically convey a piece of property without the approval of our board. So everything comes to our board with our recommendation, and then they basically do that. Properties, depending upon the program, may or may not require cash purchase. Neighborhood stabilization, since it was unique, the developers didn't buy the properties, but they did assume the debt. Well, they assumed the equivalent of the note that reflected the acquisition price. And so there were strings attached with those properties. So if they're sheriff and marshal deeds, which those funky properties I talked about that the city and county gave to us in 1998, 2001, those properties are via application. All of them, we have a set price, is 40% of their appraised value. Those can be conforming and non-conforming lots. So those are kind of more, those are not fee simple interest. So we actually advise everybody who's interested in those to do their own do the title work before purchase. You also have to do an appraisal. We will allow you to deduct the cost of the appraisal from our purchase price, but we do not allow for deduction of the title work. And then you can buy those right today via the application that's on our website. And that's one way to do those. So that's kind of how it is with those sheriff and marshal deeds. Again, going forward, as we bring properties to bear, we will have these orderly processes via RFPs and RFQs primarily to do that. So can we purchase these properties? So kind of that was the same thing. Every now and then, we may have properties that are so kind of no strings attached. Those would be few and far between. Primarily, we're trying to accomplish our goals of affordability, some revitalization work. But yes, these are methodologies for how you would basically purchase the properties. And so, let's see, another question here. Work on the land bank, they truly fee simple ownership. So yes, so the properties that we transfer to our developers will be fee simple and land and structure unless it is in a land trust structure. So if there's a property with Atlanta land trust, it will not be in a typical fee simple. You will have the structure, but not the fee in the land. And so that's unique to the land trust structure. But that's not all of our properties. Some of our properties are just basically fee simple solely contain the property and the structure. So that's an it depends question there, and that depends on the partner. Can I preserve properties in the city of Atlanta, DeKalb? We can participate in properties in the city of Atlanta, DeKalb, but only in the portion of DeKalb County that is in the city of Atlanta. So that is the ones that we can get involved in. We can extinguish taxes on the city portion of property in DeKalb County, but we do not have jurisdiction to extinguish the DeKalb County portion of any delinquent taxes there. So we're not also, so whereas our jurisdiction is just in that portion of DeKalb County is in the city, we cannot go beyond that jurisdiction to operate in the DeKalb County. Nonprofit. We do not give properties through donation. So all of our properties typically are purchased. So even if you're a nonprofit, we are not in the posture of conveying property for no purchase price. And those are all the questions in the Q&A box. And Reggie, I know there are a lot of questions in the chat. Do you want me to go to those or?
The question in the chat, I think, have been answered mostly around the presentation. So you should have a link that Michael provided, and the ones that were relevant to the presentation, I asked to put in the box. So I think that's everyone except for the last one that Troy just added.
Okay. Oh, do you have to live in Atlanta, Georgia to participate? You do not have to live in the city of Atlanta or the state of Georgia to participate. In terms of acquiring property, I would say with a caveat. There may be certain circumstances in which we are looking to find owner occupants and therefore directly work with residents in the city of Atlanta, then the answer to that would be yes. Could you be a development partner that lives outside of the city, or your business is incorporated out of the city? That is possible. There is a possibility that there would be a limitation to your residency. We are able to institute those types of restrictions based on the statutory capabilities of the Land Bank Authority. But typically, that any type of nuance that limits where you have to reside, that would be clearly instructed or told to you at the time of the program. So in the instance of the share from Marshall deeds, you do not have to live in Atlanta to buy those properties. You can basically buy them via the normal process. So I think that was the last question.
Right. Any other questions before we sign off? One note I've placed in the chat box, the links to the social media channels, and they are all live and active, chock full of good information to kind of keep you up to speed on the happenings with the land bank. I should also say that soon there will be more postings actually sharing some of the properties that are available. So if there are, if you're interested in getting involved and taking a look at some of the properties, following the social media channels will be a good way to get up to speed on them. And
Right.
then maybe Chris, you can just add some more color commentary for that question that people normally have, they just haven't asked today, around how do you actually get to see the properties?
Absolutely, and I was going to mention that. So thanks for that segue. So actually, our website is listed here, metroatlantalandbank.org. We do have a GIS-based inventory listing. So if you go to our website, you can basically click on and go to our website inventory listing. So 24/7. You can see the properties that are held by the Land Bank Authority. The land banking program is where we hold property on behalf of other entities. Those properties will still be shown, but make sure to read the notes, because the notes will tell you who's the underlying control of the property. In some cases, it might be like Invest Atlanta or NDP or somebody else. So even if we own it, the decision to the next stages may be governed by that party. So do that. And then also, if there is an application associated with property, we'll typically say application, and you can go right in and do the application online. If it says not available, that means that property is not available for purchase at this point in time. And so make sure to read the notes because we try to explain why it's not available. So I did want to add that to you also.
Great. Any other questions? One other thing I think we will put in the chat is the actual link, excuse me, the link to the website. We've done a lot of work over the last 3 to 4 months to get the website to be, highly informing and engaging and embrace a new brand. And so, it's our new baby. We would love to have feedback on it if it's helpful for you. A lot of the questions you're asking are answered, somewhere there. So it's a great place just to kind of keep handy for any questions you have about working with the land bank.
Excellent. Well, thanks to everybody for joining us for our first Lunch and Learn. So we hope it was helpful, and you'll have more of these going forward. And over the course of time, you'll also have the opportunity to meet some of our staff.
Well, this concludes, I just shared that website link, but this concludes our first of a series of webinars. Thank you so much for joining us. We definitely appreciate any feedback on how to make these more productive and useful. We plan to present a new topic each time we do these. They'll be happening monthly on the fourth Monday at lunch, each month. And I would highly encourage you to think about somebody who should have been a part of this conversation that you can share the invitation link with to have them join the next sessions, the next webinars. We want this to be an informative series of conversations that's helpful as people think about how to engage on this really important topic.
All right.
If that is all, thank you all. Have an amazing day. Thank you, Chris. And we look forward to next month's webinar.
Thank you, everyone.